Welcome, everybody, to Congregation L'Dor Va-Dor's Touch of Torah. Tonight, we have Rabbi Barry Silver, Spiritual Leader of Congregation L'Dor Va-Dor. Welcome, Rabbi Barry. And we have as our guest, our educator and Cantorial Spiritual Leader, Andy Susman. Thank you very much for being a part of our Touch of Torah. We're going to be speaking tonight about Exodus TETZAVEH. And I welcome you to participate after Rabbi Barry and Andy have spoken. And take it away, gentlemen. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here, especially with Andy. It's always good to listen to his music and hear his words of wisdom. The Torah passage, TETZAVEH, sounds a little like Touch of Torah. It sounds pretty close. Most people, when they hear TETZAVEH, they have no clue what that could possibly mean. However, the word is one which is related to a word which everyone knows, and therefore you're familiar with the meaning of it. Most people here have heard of a bar mitzvah. Bar is Aramaic, means son, and mitzvah means a good deed. However, the word mitzvah has evolved over time. It began with the meaning of a commandment. Literally, mitzvah means a commandment. Over many centuries, it evolved to mean a good deed. So the word TETZAVEH means you shall command, sometimes translated you shall instruct. And it's telling Moses that he should instruct the Jewish people with a bunch of very, very arcane rules, which really are not the most exciting. We have a pretty good crowd here today, but if I were to read for you TETZAVEH and translate it, we would rapidly lose our audience, which I'm not going to do. So I'm not going to get involved with all of the picayune rules from thousands of years ago about the priestly vestments and how they should attire themselves. Rather, I want to get to the critical aspect of this Torah passage and what it's all about. And I think that one word describes a lot. So TETZAVEH means you shall command, and it's related to mitzvah. If we notice, the word litzavot or TETZAVEH has evolved from a command to a good deed. That tells us everything we need to know about Judaism. When Judaism began, the Torah has a whole bunch of commandments. You shall do this, you shall do that, you shall do this. Why should you do it? It's obvious, because God commanded us to do it. After many, many centuries of indoctrinating the people to do the right thing, mitzvah itself evolved. No longer do we do a mitzvah because it's commanded of us. Today, a mitzvah is something we do from our heart, not because someone's telling us what to do, because we want to do it. And that tells you all the difference, and it explains very much the evolution of Judaism. When we raise our children, we tell them when they're very young, do this, do that, do this, and we have to tell them what to do. Their reasoning power is somewhat incipient. It's not very well developed, and so we just have to tell them what to do. Parents who are not very good continue to just berate and tell their kids what to do. The better parents try to instill within their children a conscience so that they will know what to do and want to do the right thing. Some people never speak to their conscience or never listen to their conscience because they don't like to talk to a total stranger. We need to make sure that in our moral development, we are doing the right thing, not because of reward, but because it's the right thing to do. And I'll go to Andy in a minute. It was Albert Einstein who said, even a mule will do the right thing in order to avoid punishment. But we're not mules. If we do the right thing only because we expect a reward and don't do something because we're worried about being punished, that's not morality. The whole system of our daughter faiths, of heaven and hell, if you obey God, you go to heaven, and if you disobey, you go to hell. And so you better do the right thing out of fear That is not morality. It has nothing to do with morality. It's just bargaining, and it's just placating a celestial dictator and trying to make the right obsequious propitiations so that you get to the right place. Judaism has nothing to do with any of that, especially modern Judaism. We do the right thing because we just want to do the right thing, because we enjoy making this world better and making the lives of others better. Cantor Andy Susman, go ahead, fill us in.
Okay, so I just want to remind everybody that we at Va-Dor have a different perspective on Judaism and the Torah, and I'm going to speak from that place. So starting with Rabbi Barry's opening gambit with the word mitzvah, perhaps the most important mitzvah is Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. And that's in Leviticus 19:18. And here's a little melody. I'm gonna punctuate tonight with music throughout, and I'll continue. I'm not quite done with my opening gambit or response to Rabbi, but we'll start with this. Here we go. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, ze klal gadol b'Torah. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, ze klal gadol b'Torah. Love your neighbor as yourself, the greatest pearl of the Torah's wealth. Love your neighbor as yourself, the greatest pearl of the Torah's wealth. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, ze klal gadol b'Torah. So, one of the things that I want to be in accord with Rabbi is that we interpret Torah a little differently. And I was perusing the portion for the week, and I came up with three central concepts. And I used the initials M, M, K. Now I'm going to give you the punchline in a second, but let's begin with those three concepts. M is for Mishkan. This particular portion talks about various accoutrements in the Mishkan and how things are supposed to be assembled and whatnot. The other M is for the Menorah. We're talking about the 7-branch Menorah, the one that's the 6 days plus the day of rest. That was the candelabra that was in the Torah, in the Mishkan in Jerusalem, when the Assyrian Greeks took charge. And we were not able to light that. That was supposed to be eternally lit. So when we reclaimed the sanctuary, that was the candelabra that we were looking to light or relight, and we get the story of the 8 days of Hanukkah and all that. The third letter, the K, is for the Kohanim, the high priests. And I'm sure Rabbi and myself will have a lot to say about that vis-a-vis contemporary Judaism. And here's my little segue into all that. MMK are the initials for the founder of Reconstructionist Judaism, Modechai M. Kaplan. And I would say that what Rabbi Barry is attempting to do with his cosmic Judaism, where the nexus of tradition, science, and spirituality is on par with the revolution that Rabbi Modechai M. Kaplan did in the 20s and 30s of the 20th century. So I'm going to share one more song, and then I'll toss it back to Rabbi, and we'll continue. So as I shared with you, the second M of the MMK is for the Menorah. And part of being here tonight, and part of having a Menorah and talking about Torah, is lighting the light of wisdom, the light of neshama, the ruach. So here we go. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Rabbi.
Yeah, I just want to pick up a little bit on what Andy was saying, especially about Rabbi Kaplan. Rabbi Kaplan was a brilliant scholar and very well versed in ancient Judaism and modern. And he founded something called Reconstructionist Judaism. What he believed was that the divisions among the Jewish people were very harmful to us, and that it was desirable for all Jews to join together as one people. Ironically, which often happens, he wanted to start a form of Judaism that would bring everyone together, but his followers ended up creating yet another division among the Jews, which served the exact opposite purpose. Another thing that Rabbi Kaplan wanted to do was he said that in each generation, because of the revelations of modern science and logic and understanding, each generation reconstructs Judaism all over again. So what is it that his followers did? Instead of reconstructing it and allowing that process to continue on, they got fixed also in a particular siddur. And heaven forbid, if you ever ask them to use a different siddur, it's unthinkable. The other thing is that rather than use the scientific method to its logical extreme, what happens in Reconstructionism is each congregation forms their own beliefs about some of the core concepts, such as God, such as the authorship of the Torah and Revelation. What happens then is that there's no ideology whatsoever, because each one is doing their own thing and there's no central organizing theme to it. And so sometimes they go in a logical scientific route and sometimes they don't. I'm not really down on Reconstructionist Judaism because I think that it represents a great advance. And I think there's many, many concepts in Reconstructionist Judaism that are far ahead of Mordecai Kaplan's time. But I do believe that one of the problems is they've got frozen in time and also not taken science to its logical ends. Science is a very unyielding process. It doesn't really care what we want to believe. It doesn't care what we hope to be true. It's based on evidence and what is true. And Judaism is also emet v'tzedek. If you want to be Jewish, you have to follow emet, or truth, even if it leads to some troubling conclusions. And so what Andy's suggesting is correct about Va-Dor. We take science and reason to its logical ends. For some reason, I'm not quite sure why, but for some reason, using a rational approach to Judaism and having Judaism based on evidence and reason and logic and the findings of science, somehow this becomes, very, very controversial and very, very troubling. Because for many people, religion is not based on what is, but based on what we wish was true. But at our place, we believe that not only can Judaism be based on what's true, but what's true is far more inspiring, far more amazing, far more spiritual than anything that human beings could concoct out of our minds. Following what is really true in the universe is a really mind-expanding process. The part of the passage that I did want to focus on is, as Andy says, it talks about the Ner Tamid. Tamid means eternal. Ner means a candle, eternal light. This eternal light is among many other things that are described in the passage, most of which I find extremely tedious and not very interesting. But the Ner Tamid, my friends, this is a symbol of the Jewish people, an eternal light to the nations. And no matter how dark things get, we are a source of light. And in the world today, the world needs us to be Jewish. They don't need us to be Republicans. They don't need us to be Democrats. They don't need us to be partisan. They don't need us to be a form of Christianity light. They need us to actually be Jews with the indomitable spirit to get us through the darkest days, with a survival instinct that can overcome all the obstacles today, with a faith in humanity and a faith in the goodness of people working together that can get us through all types of catastrophes. The world needs us to be Jews and to follow the truth. And sadly, most Jewish people are a little shy or reluctant, partly because of the ghetto mentality when we're surrounded by people that were more powerful than us. But today we are free in America. And I really, really hope that the Jews of America will take advantage of this freedom, because the world needs us to be Jews. I'd like to open it up to everybody now and share your thoughts on the Torah passage, my comments, Cantor Andy's comments, what's going on in the world today, which is quite fascinating, or anything else that you'd like to discuss. It's all yours. We open it up to others. Who would like to share?
Not quite yet, because Andy has something more to say. Go ahead, Andy.
So just to follow up with what Rabbi was talking about, Reconstructionism and Rabbi Kaplan, if I was to focus on one core tenet of Reconstructionism, one prayer in particular, the Aleinu, they developed a new construct for the Aleinu to soften the concept of chosenness. And unfortunately, or to my sadness, the other movements did not embrace even that one change. And if one of the reasons that others seem to be somewhat put off by Judaism is the particularism of it, us versus them. And the original Aleinu talks about that we're not like them. And the Reconstructionist construct softened that. And so that's an important consideration. And one more thought is, as Rabbi Barry is trying to build this Judaism of tomorrow today, the idea is that humanistic Judaism is definitely a thread or a brand that we would incorporate into our vision as something to move the narrative forward. And I got one more thing to share, and then we'll go back to the group and whatnot. One of the things about ossification or becoming, stuck in the past is, for example, the liturgy or the theology of traditional Judaism is the resurrection, and I use that word pointedly, the resurrection or the rebuilding of the temple. That is one of the biggest stumbling blocks to moving forward. The destruction of both temples was an indice that we need to not worship at a particular spot. We have a great message, and it can be global. One of the reasons that Christianity and Islam are so successful in disseminating their message is they have taken it and made it a universal calling. We have not done that yet. So I have one more song I want to share, and the reason why I share it is, in order to move forward, many times we have to be willing to let go and not stay where we are. And this last song, before we launch into a serious conversation, is called Eli, Eli, Adonai, my God. The words are written by Chana Senish. A week before she left Palestine to go back to Europe, she wrote these words. And I'll sing it in English first, then the Hebrew. Adonai, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heaven, the prayer of the heart. Eli, Eli, Shelo Yigamer Le'olam. The sand, Achol, Vehaya, Rishrush, Shel Hamayim, Berak, Hashamayim, Tefilat, Ha'adam, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart. So many times to move forward, as Rabbi Barry wants to take us forward, we have to be willing to let go of the past. Thank you.
As usually happens with Andy, he triggered something that I feel compelled to respond to. Hannah Senich was living comfortably during the Holocaust in what was then Palestine, and she sacrificed her life in order to try to save people in her native Hungary, and she's a true martyr. And the song that she sang gives thanks for just the ordinary things that we take for granted. Next time we go outside and we see a sunset or the trees or the dogs running around or our friends and family, let us remember how lucky we are and that she gave all of that up in order to try to save her people, so we should never take it for granted. What Andy mentioned about the Aleinu, it has some language which is very politically incorrect. It says that it's giving thanks to God for not making us like all the other peoples and separating us out from them. Another prayer that we say all the time is Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato, which is when we read the Torah, who chose us from among all people. In Jewish hands, those lines became lethal as we felt commanded by God to slaughter other nations and commit genocide because God commanded us to do so. Fortunately, Jews have given up that concept, maybe because we're too weak to ever do it or because we've moved on. But the concept of the chosen people has metastasized. This disease has a variant, two of them, Christianity and Islam, in which they say, we're the new chosen people and you're not anymore. And therefore, God commanded us to kill others. This whole concept of chosenness and God authorizing genocide against other people, which is a natural, inexorable conclusion of believing that God chose you, is something that has brought a chamber of horrors to mankind. That's why I insist that for Jews who want to be a light to the nations, we should start out with this. Say we repudiate the chosen people concept. We were not chosen. We chose to serve others. We choose to try to live a godly life. We were not chosen by a divine being. We repudiate it. And now we ask the daughter phase to also repudiate it. And now let's all get along, loving each other instead of having a sibling rivalry over whose make-believe celestial father is greater than the other. If we could do that, then we could be on our way to truly being a light to the nations rather than keeping the people in darkness. Now, I hope that after saying these things, I must have triggered something in someone who will disagree with something that I said. If not, I'm not trying hard enough. Okay, let's open it up for people. Who wants to join in, either agreeing or disagreeing or raising a point of your own? It's all yours.
Go ahead, Ron.
Ron.
I apparently misunderstood that concept because I was of the impression that the concept was that we as Jews have to share everything we've learned from our religion and everything that's spiritual and everything that's valuable and intellectual with everybody. And it's a sharing, not a one-upsmanship.
Well, Ron, you raise a very good point. Remember how I mentioned the word mitzvah has evolved? It started out you're commanded, and now we do it because it's the right thing to do. Same thing with the chosen people concept. If you read the Torah and take it literally, your mind will be shackled by the concept expressed in the Torah that God chose the Jewish people as his chosen one, Am Segulah, and he ordered the Jewish people to commit genocide against 7 different nations and to do other atrocities as well, because we were chosen by God and these people were going against God. They were worshiping the wrong God. So it's very lethal Now, the daughter faiths have picked up on that concept and ignored 3,000 years of Jewish progress and gone right back to the source. And now they adopt that and start carrying it out literally. The Jewish people have evolved in their concept to, as you say, to suggest, no, we weren't chosen in order to be God's favorites so we could go around lording it over other people. We were chosen to be a light to the nations and to set an example for others. So to the extent that the concept has evolved, it can have a good purpose. But in order to eradicate this very dangerous notion, which is still practiced in Islam by people flying planes into buildings, and still practiced in Christianity by people going into synagogues and shooting Jews because we're not the chosen ones according to their scripture. If we want to help humanity advance, we could say we've evolved beyond this. We no longer say God chose us to be better than others. God, or not God, but we choose to live a godly fashion. But you're 100% correct, Ron, about the modern interpretation of that concept. That's a very good point you raised. Anybody else? All right, well, maybe, go ahead, Harris. Oh. You're muted.
Unmute yourself, Harris. I just unmuted. Okay.
Okay. I just have one thing to say about all the people that were Jews that dropped out. They're Jews by name, but where I live, nobody goes to shul anymore. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we're facing. It's the same in Christianity. They're all dropping out. So that's what's going on today.
Why do you think that is, Harris?
Well, I know in the Catholics that I've spoken to, with all the priests molesting thousands of boys, that's one of the things that happens, and they just don't believe it. They don't.
What about Judaism? What happened? Why with Judaism are people not allowed?
I don't know. I really don't. I just don't. Maybe it's too much trouble. Maybe they can't afford it. I don't know. Well, but that's a fact.
Yeah, so there's about 90% of the Jewish people don't affiliate, which is really astounding when you think we have such an amazing heritage and such an important mission to accomplish. 90% don't bother, as you say. And I think, Harris, you're right. A lot of them just don't want to bother. It's not important to them. However, as people on this Zoom link who obviously care about Judaism, I think we need to ask some serious and some hard questions. Instead of blaming them, turn inward and say, what are we doing wrong that causes 90% of the people to want nothing to do with us? And my conclusion, based on speaking to many, many people, I ask the hard questions. I do a lot of weddings, funerals, baby namings, and the people invariably say, I'm Jewish by culture, but not by religion. I'm part of the Jewish civilization, but I'm not religious. I always ask why. And I get pretty much the same response across the board. They don't believe. They don't believe in Judaism. They don't believe there's somebody out there watching over us, pulling the strings, doing these things. They don't believe God wrote the Torah, and they don't believe it's true. And so many, many people have encountered, they're not familiar with the fact that Judaism's evolved. They don't even know enough to realize that there's other forms of Judaism. And so that's why I believe it's very, very important that we explain to them that Judaism has evolved, and there are forms of Judaism that don't require you to sacrifice your rational mind, where the rational mind can actually enhance your spirituality. And there's a lot of Jewish people who aren't really interested in helping others. I mean, being Jewish, part of being Jewish is to do things for other people. They think that helping others means that they have to make a sacrifice. Now they're not going to be as happy because they have to do something for someone else. They don't understand the true joy that comes from helping other people and being part of a mission to make the world better. I think Ron has something to say about this.
Unmute, honey.
I've experienced all the steps along the way, starting with Orthodox and conservative, then Reform, and on and on. And I have only in recent years begun to be able to spiritually connect better than ever before. I find the message that's coming across to be more in tune with where I think we want to be, with a lot of love and a lot of music and a lot of dancing and a lot of caring and interaction. And it's more real. It's not just, did you stand up at the right moment to say the right bracha? Did you sit down at the right moment? It's not that rigid, old-time religion. And I, for one, am much happier because of that.
Ron, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's not the ritual, it's the spiritual. And it's connecting with each other, connecting with our heritage, and also feeling a sense of spirituality that we're part of an amazing universe and cosmos, feeling that through music and through joy and words that make sense to our rational minds, that we can relate to, not things that insult our rational minds. I'm very glad that you have experienced that. I know a lot of people have found that through Cantor Andy Susman. I know that he conveys that spirituality, and you can see it in his neshama. There's a lot of people doing things that they don't really believe, and you can tell. They're saying things that they're supposed to say, but they don't really feel it. And I'm glad to have him with us because he has the ability to convey that sense of spirituality. Anybody else? Harris, go ahead.
I'll tell you, when I was 22, I met a beautiful shiksa from Swarthmore, Pennsylvania, whose family had millions, and I told my mother, and my mother said she should die with all the millions. So today, the example is Jews are marrying anybody today. That's the point.
And do you think that's the problem? Is that
That's
why?
a problem, right? Intermarriage is a big thing.
Well, if you had married that girl, you would have had millions of dollars to donate to a synagogue. Could have perpetuated Judaism a lot. Your mom didn't see that, I guess.
No. But today, it's a different culture.
Go ahead, Stanley.
I also think it's the messaging, to Ron's point, that make people like, not like, want to join, not want to join, participate, not participate. And so and maybe it's a Jewish thing. You know, in the Knesset, there's 39 political parties. And to get a majority of out of 120 members of the Knesset takes 61. But they've never had any party ever, to my knowledge, get to 61. It takes a coalition of 2 people here, 5 people there, 6 people there, but they're typically Jewish people. Each one has a different axe to grind, in some cases, point of view, and translating that over on this side of the ocean, you know, there's a lot of differences out there between Chabad and Orthodox and conservative and Reform and Messianic and you name it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. People like these choices, I guess.
Well, having choices is good, but we should be able to unite as a people, even though we have different approaches to Judaism, but that has not been done. The lines are very rigid. Trying to get someone from a different denomination to come in and speak at our place or to speak together, there's very little unity, and we can't possibly hope to unite the world if we can't even unite each other. I agree with you, Stanley. I think Alan had his hand raised. Alan, did you want to share a comment?
I really don't have anything to add right now, Barry.
All right. Anybody else? Then go ahead, Andy. Oh, Deborah.
You know, I don't know that I have something totally different, but listening to you, Rabbi, and listening to Ron, who I know, and before you said the word joy, Rabbi, you happened to have said it a few minutes ago, when I was in my mind, what came to my mind was the word joy. And then all of a sudden you said it along with your other comments. And so when I was thinking of joy, I was raised in a conservative home. I had a bat mitzvah. I had all of that, and it meant nothing to me at that time. But I like when you said evolving. That's a key word, because it is evolving. I mean, yes, we are not united as would be much more desirable to be united and not have all this, division. But at this point, and for many years now, I have found joy in whatever it is that I'm following. And I certainly could not say that in years past. It was too rigid. The religion, the customs, the tradition, yeah, that's all, I'm used to that. But there's so much more to it than that. There is the spiritual side, there is the joyous side, but I did not experience that until the last, call it 10 years. And I can't imagine my life without that part of the spirituality that I have embraced that does bring me great happiness and joy. So it is very different. And Harris was speaking about, I think he also was thinking of years ago. And when he said that about the interfaith marriage, I mean, that certainly did not just start happening now. And I think what's interesting to me is I know a lot of people that have married outside of, they married someone that wasn't Jewish. But what's interesting to me is a lot of those people have embraced the cultural part of Judaism. They've studied, they've converted in some cases, in many cases, and they're raising their children, in the Jewish way. I mean, so there's so many different avenues out there, but I think that me personally and people that I know have found the joy within all of this, and it's wonderful.
Well, I just want to comment on what you mentioned, because I think it's so important, Deborah, that to many people, the Sabbath or a Saturday is a Saturday, S-A-D-D-E-R. It should be a more joyous day. Instead, they're just thinking, well, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do this. It's just all these rules. That's a hassle. That's not what Judaism was meant to be. It's supposed to make us joyful. The word Jewish comes from Yehudah, which means to give thanks. If we had an attitude of gratitude and gave thanks for everything, if we plugged into the app of appreciation for everything we have, which is what Judaism is all about, we would be happier. We don't say thank you in order to make someone else, some deity, feel like we're grateful. To express gratitude is to make us appreciative and make us more joyous with what we have. Because if all you're thinking about was what you don't have, you'll never be happy. But if you can appreciate what you have, that's what being Jewish is all about. I also want to comment on the intermarriage part. Okay, so my father was among the first rabbis to do interfaith weddings. And I've done probably at least 1,000 of them. Okay, so I do lots of interfaith weddings. And this is what I have found in my experience. Interfaith marriage does not cause the decline in Judaism.
Right.
The response to interfaith marriage causes the decline of Judaism. So that if somebody intermarries and they're in love, if a rabbi says, oh, I don't approve of this, or I'm not going to do the ceremony, they're not going to say, oh, okay, I'll find somebody else. It doesn't work that way. When Jewish people become accepted in the larger society, they're going to meet and fall in love with non-Jewish people. That's a fact. And the rabbis can't try to deny that fact. But the rabbis have a choice, and the Jewish community has a choice. Given this fact, how do we respond? Do we say, welcome, we've got an awesome religion and we're glad to have you be part of it? Or do we say, oh, we don't approve of you? Or maybe you should try to marry someone else. Or you're not allowed up on the bima unless you jump through some hoops, or you're not like the rest of us. That is what causes both sides, the Jewish and the non-Jewish, to want one to think, I want nothing to do with these people. I'm giving up on Judaism. How do I know that? Because I've had many, many, many couples come to me saying, we went to the rabbi, and it was appalling. They rejected us. They insulted me. They said, I'm not a good Jew. They insulted my parents. And so we want nothing to do with Judaism. So these people are lost. However, if you have a rabbi in a community who says, welcome, I'm glad to give you a Jewish ceremony, you now bring in another person, and you now have a family that's going to be raised Jewish. Some people don't want to do that because racially they're snobs, or they think that Jews are an elitist group. Oh, we don't want these others to come in. There are Jewish people like that.
Well,
and we should reject that. We should
well,
reject.
I had a personal experience in my own family that exactly what you're talking about. It was many, many years ago, but it was my own parents who were rejecting their son's wife. And it was, oh, it caused a lot of problems. And on top of it, this person that my brother married, how do I put this? She was raised in an area where there were very few Jewish people. Let's put it that way. So well, as I said, her first introduction to anyone Jewish was her future in-laws who were rejecting her because she was not Jewish. And it caused extreme heartache for many, many years until it somehow things softened. She was more accepting. My parents became, it was many years ago when things were like that. That was a common scene, and I know you know that. But that was terrible. I mean, that was terrible. But because of the way they were raised and the generation that my parents were in, they felt like, well, we can't. This is the way we are, and there was no flexibility whatsoever. And
partly because of the chosen people concept.
Yes,
we're chosen and you're not.
The consciousness, they had that consciousness, and they were not willing to look, and outside of that, and they just felt we're right. How could you do this? On and on. So that was very unfortunate, and I that was pretty personal in my own family. So
go ahead, Ron.
Unlike the negative experiences that Harris has unfortunately had in seeing a decline and everything's falling apart, I've seen a lot of positive things. I've seen a lot of people as part of a marriage, or sometimes not even part of a marriage, just as part of their own self-awakening, they became very Jewish and very involved in it and very spiritual, and in so many ways superior in their thrust for it than Jews who've been Jews their whole life. So I think I've been more fortunate than Harris in that this has been a big example of a lot of experiences that I have had.
Good for you.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Sid has had his hand raised, but go ahead, Rabbi.
Go ahead, Sid.
Yes, something that strikes me is that Israel's been getting a lot of bad press lately over the, Amnesty International and apartheid.
Mm-hmm.
And me, I'm not that attached, but, perhaps it's ammunition for people that have a predisposition towards seeing only negative.
Well, let me respond to Ron and then also to Sid. Ron, we at Va-Dor, we've recently had some wonderful, joyous occasions where people decided to join with the Jewish people. We've had some beautiful conversions, baby namings, weddings with non-Jews joining the fold. So we have experienced these things so many times because we reach out to Jews of all backgrounds. But I think what Harris is commenting on, legitimately so, is that if you look statistically, if you look at the hard numbers and you see what's happening to Judaism, 2 generations ago, most people joined synagogues. Today, most people don't. And of course, there are many occasions and many people who are finding spirituality in Judaism, but the statistics are not good. And we need to look inside of ourselves and find out, what are we doing wrong? What's going on? Now, our approach at Lador Va-Dor is to make it joyous, make it spiritual. We call it inspirational, to be inspiring but rational at the same time, and to reach out to others and to embrace dialogue so that we welcome everyone, even regardless of your belief system or your finances, or everybody's welcome. Now, I do want to comment on what Sid has mentioned about Israel. It is very true that the United Nations and the world community has been very much opposed to Israel. And some people think that that's a cause of anti-Semitism. People don't like what Israel is doing, and therefore they become anti-Semitic. I think it's the opposite. I think people are anti-Semitic, and therefore they hold Israel to another standard and they criticize Israel. As an example of that, when Israel was founded in 1948, Israel put in its charter and sent a message to its neighbors saying, this is wonderful. We have our own state for the first time in nearly 2,000 years. We open our arms to work with our Arab neighbors to create peace in this area. The Arabs, on the other hand, said, we're going to finish what Hitler started, and we're going to wipe you out, and we're going to drive you into the sea. And they tried to do that over and over and over and over and over again. Now, you would think if the world was neutral and objective, they would say, my gosh, that's horrible. I mean, the Jewish people have one tiny little oasis of dignity, one little Jewish state, and there's dozens of Muslim states, dozens of Christian states, and all they want to do is survive after a third of their people were wiped out in the Holocaust, and they're being threatened with annihilation. This is horrible. That is not what happened. The world community sided with the people who tried to exterminate us, and the UN constantly has resolutions against us. I believe this is a result of anti-Semitism in Islam and Christianity, based on their foundational documents. And so after the Holocaust, it became unpopular to go against the Jews. After so many people were killed, it became out of vogue to say, I don't like Jewish people. So the acceptable version was, I don't like the Jewish state, and to hold Israel to a different standard. I am not suggesting that Israel does nothing wrong, or that Israel doesn't have things that they've done that could be criticized. No person and no nation does. But what I am suggesting is that there's a ridiculous double standard where Israel's the only democracy in the Middle East, the only place where women's rights are respected, the only place where gay rights are respected, the only place you can criticize the government and live to talk about it. And you have liberals who champion all the liberal values of Israel, including it's a socialist country. And the far left is criticizing and bashing Israel. And the far right are anti-Semitic too. I attribute it to anti-Semitism. And I think we need to challenge the other major religions, first addressing our own foibles, and then being able to address theirs. Anybody else want to share some comments? Sharon, go right ahead.
I just want to share, I want to kind of share what you said, Rabbi. Last weekend for Shabbat, we had a beautiful, beautiful young couple on our Shabbat. And the young woman converted to Judaism. She's just about to give birth to her first son. And she wanted to have her son be Jewish as he's born with a Jewish mother. And it was so exciting. And they were so grateful and so thrilled. I mean, it was like Rabbi, myself, the other people on the Shabbat, we were quelling inside, knowing the joy that we were bringing this family, this beautiful young woman and her handsome husband and their family. They're thrilled to have her as now a Jew. And I want to, I can't remember who said it. It might have been Ron or Deborah, but I think people that do convert to Judaism, they have a choice. I know Rabbi Barry said this many times. When somebody converts, they're making a literal choice to convert to Judaism. They weren't born into it, and their parents forced them to go to Hebrew school or forced them to go to get bat mitzvah and go do their studies and all that. But they make a literal choice that I want to be Jewish for my family's sake, or for my sake, or for my parents' sake, or my parents-in-law's sake, or whatever. They make a literal choice, and because of that, they feel closer and prouder to do it. And we met with a woman. I mean, she does everything. She's like a little balabusta that she converted a few years ago, and she makes all the Jewish meals, and she was raised, I don't get Catholic or Christian, whatever, and she's Jewish now, and you wouldn't even know that she wasn't ever. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that.
Well, thanks, Sharon. And I want to mention also that Sharon makes all of this possible. She's the one that uses the technology and sets it all up so that these people can join us through Zoom, which allows people to participate and their families participating from all over the place. We also recently had another example. We had Miriam, who was married and intermarried, and she speaks Spanish. We did a ceremony in Spanish and English, and she came on, and she was just so thrilled and so joyous. I just received a beautiful letter from her. And I also, today, it's kind of odd, but I performed what I call a celebration of life. That's what other people call a funeral. And I was there with Carol. Carol does some really great music, and we were celebrating the life of this loved one. And the wife of the deceased said, I've been to many funerals and I can't wait to get out. She said, this one, I was sorry that it came to an end. She said it was so beautiful to celebrate his life in that way. And Judaism has the capacity to be so inspiring and so loving and so life-affirming, if only we bring out those aspects. Peter, I think you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. Can anyone tell me where I can find a woman like that?
Yeah, just hang out with us.
All right.
we got a lot of people. Usually it's too late because they're already with somebody, but we have a lot of people who have sisters and other people.
All right.
But in actuality, if you're single and you want to meet the right person, networking is the best way to do it.
I just want to ask Peter. I want to ask Peter if he was referring to a woman who's a convert versus a Jewish woman.
Well, that's an interesting question. I have an answer for you.
The way you said that was following to talking about all these lovely women that converted and now they're embracing Judaism.
Just very quickly, I could reply to that. I'm 66 now, and when I was 28, I met an Italian woman, full-bred Italian woman. Her mother, as they say, was right off the boat. She didn't speak a word of English. And I've been with plenty of Jewish women, or more specifically, I've been in relationships with only Jewish women. Jeannie Paterna was the only woman who was not Jewish. And I still talk about her decades later because she's like my barometer, my measuring stick, by which I, in a sense, not judged, but made a comparison to all the Jewish women I was with. And thinking about it now in present time, I never experienced anything like that in a woman. I mean, she was just happy being on my arm or, sitting next to me on a couch. And it burned into my memory. I can't get rid of it, how accommodating she was, but she didn't convert, but I'm just bringing out, I was half joking when I said, where can I find a woman like that? But what's interesting is the fact that certain women who feel more, who are more prone to convert, they do it for very specific reasons, because I could be wrong, but I get a sense that they're not happy with their own religion. But all in all, it's really the person, in and of itself, whether they're Jewish, Christian, or otherwise, is, the most important underlying fact. But women who do convert, I have met women who have converted. They do it for a reason, a very, very definite reason. So that's it. That's my viewpoint.
Do you live in South Florida? Do you live in South Florida or somewhere
Yes,
else?
I'm here in Delray Beach.
Oh, I'd love
Peter,
to talk.
Peter is on the open market.
About this topic.
Yeah, I'm on the open market, right?
I'm
sorry.
Peter's
Yeah.
on the open market. I just have to interject here. Many times when we first fall in love, the first person that we're with, there's a feeling that you get that's hard to rival because it's the first time you fell in love. And so it's really difficult for anyone to compare with that, not because they're Jewish or not Jewish, whatever, just because it's the first one. I think also Peter's raising a very good point. When we, it could be a romantic relationship or any relationship, but when we find someone who enjoys us for who we are and likes to be with us and gives us positive feedback about the type of person we are without trying to make us into somebody else, it's really hard to beat that. And this has nothing to do with being Jewish or not Jewish. I don't want to give the impression that I'm suggesting that intermarriage is the solution to Jewish survival. It is not. I think it's wonderful when two Jewish people meet. All I'm suggesting is that when we do meet someone of a different religion, if we are hostile to that person, it's the most unreligious thing we can do, and it's detrimental to Judaism. And when we're receptive, it breaks down barriers and it breaks down walls, and it helps knock down the stereotype that Jews are clannish. And if we reject them, it only reinforces a very negative stereotype. We should do everything we can not to do that. Anybody else want to share anything? I think we've had a good discussion.
Andy has his hand raised. Go ahead, Andy.
Go ahead, Andy.
Okay, so come full circle, and once again we began with the Torah portion, and I began with the three terms: Mishkan, Menorah, and the Kohanim.
Kohanim.
Keep in mind that where we are tonight, we are as a byproduct of the evolution of Judaism. The Mishkan, the temple, the holy temple in Jerusalem, the Kohanim, the priesthood, are, for lack of a more delicate term, archaic. And they were holding us back in many ways from being an or l'goyim, a light to the nations. So as we learn more about Rabbi's vision for cosmic Judaism, let's keep in mind we want to take the essence of Judaism and build on it. And Reconstructionist Judaism and Rabbi Kaplan, Modechai Kaplan, said the following: tradition gets a vote, but not a veto. And I love tradition when we couch it with new eyes. And the first chief rabbi in Palestine in the 20th century, Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook, said, we must make the old new and the new holy. And having said that, I got one more song, but before I do that, maybe someone has a comment before I give it.
Well, let me just refer to what you said, because some people think Rabbi Kook was a kook, but actually he was, I refer to him as Rabbi Cook because he had the recipe for how to enliven Judaism. I just want to play off on what Andy said. In our version of Judaism that we practice at Va-Dor, and I refer to it as cosmic Judaism, other people like inspirational Judaism or other terminology. Our goal is not to obliterate tradition. It's the exact opposite. Our goal is to embrace tradition, but to understand it in new and modern ways. So let me refer to what Andy's saying, that in this passage it talks about the Mishkan, the eternal light, and the priesthood. And here's how we can all think about this. The Mishkan was a holy sanctuary. The sanctuary in Jerusalem no longer exists, but we can reconstruct it within our own hearts. Our hearts can be a holy sanctuary. It can be a holy place. When we get rid of all the clutter and the negativity, we can bring holiness into our heart and we become a sanctuary. As far as the light the eternal light, we can be a light in the darkness. When other people are suffering and when the world is dark, we can remind people that there is a great light that we believe in. That's why Jewish people start the day in the evening and end it with the day, because we believe wherever it's dark, it's followed by the light. And we're commanded, so to speak, or called upon, or we choose to bring light. And so that's another aspect of it. As far as the priesthood, the Kohanim, in time, by the way, the word priest is not even defined in this passage. It's basically a term that was adopted from the Egyptians and others. The Jewish people have been called a kingdom of priests. What that means, my friends, is that each of us has been ordained to be a priest, a source of holiness to other people. And you can also look at it this way. The Orthodox are waiting for the Messiah to come. When's that going to happen? God will send the Messiah when God is ready. In modern Judaism, we have a different concept. We are all little messiahs. And when each of us comes together and joins together to make a better world, we achieve a critical mass if we play our part. We can all be a little messiah. And how can I prove that we are a little messiah? What are the first two letters in the word Messiah? M-E. All right. What are the last three letters in the word Messiah? It's Y-A-H. You know what Y-A-H means? Y-A-H means God. What that means is that this power to make this world better is not something from beyond. It's something inherent in all of us. A little Messiah, a little godliness has been planted in each of us, in me and in you. And when we recognize that and work together as a Jewish people, we create the critical mass to bring about Messianic times. With that, I will conclude this Torah study, and I'll let Andy conclude with a song. And Ron, you can get the final word if you want, and then we'll have Sharon give the announcements.
So one of my favorite songs to bring this all to a close is Al Shlosha Devarim. The world is based on three things: on Torah, on prayer, and deeds of loving kindness. Al Shlosha Devarim. Al Shlosha Devarim. Al Shlosha Devarim Ha'olam Omed. The whole world stands on three things. The whole world stands on three things. Al Shlosha Devarim Ha'olam Omed. On Torah and on prayer and on deeds of loving kindness. Al HaTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim.
Muy bien. Mitzuyan. Thank you. Ron, go ahead. Close us out.
I just wanted to say thank you to all of you, really. I got a lot out of tonight. I got a lot of things to think about. And I also got a lot of good, positive feelings. And Rabbi Barry Silver and Cantor and the Susman, you did a hell of a job. You really did. I think so.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed your participation. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for your kind words. Go ahead, Sharon. Close us out with the announcements.
Thank you all for joining us this evening for a Touch of Torah. Thank you, Andy, for being our guest tonight. We really enjoyed you. Thank you, Rabbi Barry, and thank you to all of our guests. Thank you for being part of this. And it's important to be together and to study Torah just a little bit more. We have Friday evening, we're going to meet live with Va-Dor at the Carlisle Palm Beach, which is on East Ocean Avenue, 450 East Ocean Avenue, just before A1A in Lantana, Florida. We invite you all to join us live at 7 p.m. on Friday evening February 11th. We also will be on Zoom and YouTube at the same time, if technology serves me well. And we thank you for being a part of L'Dor Va-Dor tonight. We have these Torah studies every Tuesday at 7, and we welcome you to be a part of everything we have to offer. Thank you so much for all of your input. I really appreciated it. And thank you for coming